Hey everybody, how are y'all doing today? Hey, let's talk Candyman, or as I should specifically say, Candyman 2021. Because despite what the advertising might lead you to believe, this is not a remake of any kind, this is a full-blown sequel to the original 1992 Candyman, thus the appropriate title is Candyman 2021. So they basically pulled a Halloween here, where Halloween 2018, despite sharing the same name as the original 1978 classic, is actually a sequel ignoring all previous sequels, trying to kind of reboot the series in a new direction, and that's exactly what this film does here. So if you're not familiar with the original Candyman, the legend of the Candyman is this vengeful spirit that was caused by a hate crime in the 1800s, one that was especially brutal and creative. And so the urban legend is that if you call his name 5 times in a mirror, he will appear and kill you. And he's got a hook arm, he has bees around him, and he works within mirrors, which are all details relevant to his death. So in this film, we follow our main character, Anthony, played by Yahya Abdul-Mateen, who's an artist who's trying to explore the next big message. He rediscovers the setting from the original film, Cabrini Green, which is a housing development specifically built for low-income housing, or really specifically for a specific ethnicity. And it's through his research he rediscovers the urban legend of Candyman, and through his art show makes it more of a mainstream thing, which of course brings a trail of death. And so where this film goes from here is there's actually some pretty clever ties to the original film, as well as a fascinating concept about the Candyman not only being one entity, but being numerous, being sort of like a hive mind, which, you get it? Bees. Huh. But there's this clever new twist on the Candyman persona that he's the symbol of social injustice, specifically hate crimes against black men through multiple different generations, which unfortunately the film does not really clarify up until the very end of the film. In fact, it's these shadow puppets that you saw in the advertising. They do a full sequence through the ending credits, and that's when the message of the film is a lot more clarified, which seems to be kind of a shame not to really explore the idea in the film itself. But some of the other good things in this film is that there's a lot of clever use of mirrors, as well as some really interesting shots. Specifically, there are some scenes that play through, and you'll just see the Candyman standing in one of the mirrors. Just no attention given to him, he's just there subtly in the background. And so you're watching every scene like, oh, is he there? I don't know. I have to rewatch that. It's clever. I love that kind of subtlety in horror. There's this one brilliant shot where there's a kill sequence in a bathroom and someone drops their makeup mirror, and we see the entire sequence in that reflection. It's brilliant. I love it. So you only see just a little bit, but what little bit you see is disturbing. There's this other great faraway wide shot where there's no dialogue, we can't hear the characters, we just see the actions outside of their apartment, and we just see the actions unfold. And again, there's some great directing here and there. But with all that said though, if you are a fan of the original film, you are going to have some issues with this follow-up. Because on one hand, the original film did have some heavy racial commentary, but it was a lot more subtle and a lot better written into the story. And this film is very much in your face about it, which is not really a surprise because Jordan Peele did not direct this, but he was producer and one of the writers. And if you've seen his previous horror films, you know he's not exactly subtle. And again, there's a clever idea trying to brew in this film, but it never really has enough time to breathe. Again, I didn't really feel like the message was really clear until the end credits, which is a really odd thing to say. The one thing that did distress me though is that they took the Candyman persona and they kind of twisted him into something else. Almost like there's a personal agenda behind the writers. You can tell there's a motive behind the story, trying to make you feel a certain way. And that's all well and good, but unfortunately, it's very blunt. Because Candyman from the original film was this boogeyman. He was a vengeful spirit, a result of hate crimes. And the thing is, he was a neutral party. He killed innocent black kids. Like, there was no racial justice here. He was just a monster. Tony Todd did a fantastic job making an iconic monster back in the early 90s. And this version of Candyman is not necessarily a replacement for Tony Todd. Like I said, there's multiple Candyman established here. But now they're setting up the Candyman as some kind of symbol of social justice, which seems to be incredibly misleading of what the character is all about. I mean, I have to remind people that the original story before the original film was a Clive Barker short, the same name, Candyman, where the Candyman wasn't even black, hell, he wasn't even human, he was a literal boogeyman, complete with bees and hook arm. So it's not to say the subject matter isn't worth talking about, but in today's media, it's kind of oversaturated with this same kind of commentary. And, honestly, at this point, I'm trying to look for a message that's a little bit different. Try to give us a unique perspective or give us solutions. I had reviewed the first season of Them, and that was all about a very specific perspective to show how terrifying it could be being a black family in a white neighborhood. And of course, there's shows like Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Marvel or not, it actually introduced the conflicts of taking on power and authority in a very racist modern America, and still trying to stand up and do the right thing anyway. So we have this message that's everywhere, and we have this message, everywhere, and there's unique takes on it, and this film to me does nothing new. There's a neat concept with the hive mentality of the Candyman, but it's barely explored, in my opinion. And unfortunately, even the ending of the movie just kind of divulges into this very stereotypical blood and gore type scenario. And speaking of racial discrimination, the film talks about it a lot, but we don't see any of it happen until the very end of the film. So, I don't know, guys. On one hand, I felt like it was neat to see a continuation of the Candyman. I love the original film for having subtle commentary and just actually feeling like a ghost story. It was haunting, it was ethereal, it was the way it was edited, the way it was shot, it was incredibly memorable. It wasn't by any means like the best horror film of the 90s, but it was still memorable nonetheless. This film, on the other hand, feels like a typical modern horror slasher, which is a shame. Because compared to the original film, even though it was also a slasher film, it also still felt like a psychological horror film at the same time. In this one, there's none of that. This is pretty blunt in your face, and I just think it's a shame to say this was not worth the wait. That's why Candyman gets my score of 3 stars. Guys, thanks as always for watching, and how do you like the new setup? I'm hoping this works out for you guys. I'm trying to keep it a little more casual with the movie reviews. But anyway, have you guys seen Candyman, the original 1992 version, or this 2021 reboot sequel? And if not, what else have you been watching lately? Comment below, let me know, and stay tuned if y'all want to see more.